Hello, welcome back SharePoint people. We are going to take another deep dive into charting. In previous videos we looked at some different charting options for SharePoint Online. Today we're going to do a deep dive and focus on image charts. What's that? An image chart is the term I'm using to refer to a chart that's rendered outside of SharePoint and rendered to you inside your environment. What you'll see through these examples is that it's fun, it's easy to set up, and it's something that you can tap into and have a lot of different options. So with that, let's get SharePoint Smart. Okay, I am in a special configuration tool that I made in my website. This will be linked in the YouTube video. It's free. There aren't any kind of limitations of any kind, but you can get to that easily following the link below our video. We're going to start today by looking at this configuration tool and just explore and see what kind of charts we can make. What do those look like? How can we adjust the configuration options? That type of thing. Now, before I even do that, I want to take the time to explain how does this even work. And the way this works is by passing configuration data to another server, which renders the chart based on our configuration as an image. And this is key for what we want to do in SharePoint later on in next steps. The images that you see in this configuration tool are being rendered from a third-party tool called QuickChart.io. It is a proprietary service. However, you can have images rendered as much as once per second from the server for free. So you don't have to sign up or do anything at all, and everything should work fine without any issue. The way that the charts are rendered on the server is by using some JavaScript configuration, and these charts are rendered using the open source chart.js platform. Easy for me to say. Chart.js is widely recognized as the most popular and most widely used open source JavaScript based charting tool. So it's very well known, and so these charts that you see rendered are tapping into that. So we're feeding over some configuration information to QuickChart, and that's where it's coming from. So everything you see in my chart preview is just an image that's being rendered from their server. So let's start by having a little bit of fun. We're just going to look at some different chart options and some configuration we can do. So in this tool, the best way to learn is to just try different settings and see what it does. You can see I just changed the height of the chart, and you can see it changes real time, and I get an image back differently right away. I can change the title at the top. Let's say cats and dogs, and you can see that changed. I can do things like mess around with font size or font family, that type of thing. We'll change that to a different font. And then all kinds of other different options I can do. Let's say I don't want purple, I want green. So you can see it's a pretty simple to understand concepts here. We've got a grid in the background. If I want to make a different grid color, I can do that pretty easily. So that's just the bar chart. Now you might want to do a column. You can see it's the same concept, it just flips the axis. And then you can scroll depending on the size of the chart that you've made. If you ever want to reset, you can just hit the reset button. It'll start all the configuration over again for you. Here's a donut, which is really very much the same as a pie chart. Okay, and also just for an example, what this does is load in some random data, and if I want to try a different data set, I can just click this load random and it will change that for me. So this is a really good place to start. Basically just play around in this tool and see what these different kind of charts look like, see what you can do. Far and away, these ones you see at the top are the most common kind of charts that you might do. Now, when things get a little more complicated, usually what you're going to have is multiple data sets. And that's the type of things where as a developer or analyst or something like that, you need to do something more of this size. So you can see this is a multi-line data set. And then, I can do more tweaking. So let's say I want to do a light gray background. Oh, I gave too many chart configurations in too short a period of time. There it goes. By the way, I should mention you can pay a monthly fee to QuickChart.io if you have heavy volume use in your environment, but normally that's not going to be necessary. It kind of only gets angry at you if in this case, I'm changing the configuration very quickly, giving a lot of requests to their server, but normally that's not an issue. Okay, so I can do that. I can change the size of the line. The way I do that is with the width down here. There you go. So I think you get the general idea. If I want to do dash lines, I can do that, and it'll serve back a dash line thing. Let me do vertical labels also. It's fighting with me because I am giving it lots of requests. There it goes. Okay, so hopefully you can see just by playing around with these configuration options that in very short time you can get basically a dummy chart going here as a first step, and this is kind of your target. And once you have this set up the way that you want, then you're going to look at the data configuration section at the bottom. And this is where we're going to hook up to SharePoint. So at the bottom here, what you're going to see is that we have some configuration field. One is for the labels. Those are left to right across the bottom. And then we have data sets. Okay, so we have 3 different data sets in this particular case. So I need to say what those are. So I could put something like cats, dogs, rocks. Okay, that changes that. And then it wants to know, okay, well, what are the names of the fields in SharePoint? And that's where we're going to connect to SharePoint. This will make more sense in a minute. But basically, right now, by default, it just says, okay, I'm going to look for data in SharePoint called dataset 1, dataset 2, dataset 3. And that's where it's going to retrieve values. And what it's expecting is a comma delimited set of values, as you see in these 3 blue shaded boxes down here. So this is a key part. So you start as the first step, and then we need to make sure SharePoint matches what's being expected in the configuration tool here. Okay, so start here, play around with this page, and become comfortable with your different configuration options and different things you can do, which you can really do, just kind of teach yourself by just playing around in a few minutes. There's not really much to it. You can see I'm changing colors and changing the appearance of this quite easily. Okay, so let's bring it back to SharePoint. After all, that's what we focus on in our videos. So here's a typical situation in SharePoint. Everything about SharePoint is lists and list data. And in our example, we've got a help desk ticket system. So we have help tickets coming in. And in this type of system, those have a different status depending on what's going on. And they probably also have a category. So that's what you see. So I'm doing some tracking. And this is the core data, if you will. Now, the thing is, I can't hook up directly to that data. There's some middle steps. And basically, I have to flatten out this data and get it into a summary. So I cannot render a chart directly by just saying, show me a chart of the help tickets list. We need to answer some more questions and consolidate and summarize this data before we can connect up with the chart. Okay, so here's an example of an aggregation of that data. I have a workflow that I did in Power Automate, which runs to check those help tickets and find out when were they created and what is their status. And then it will tabulate totals of those tickets and populate this. So this kind of aggregation of data is a little bit more tricky. It's a little bit more advanced. But you start to get the idea. We're trying to flatten that data and get some summary. In this case, it's a report showing on a week-by-week basis how many tickets were in each status. And that allows us to do what you would call trending charts. Okay, so that's an example. And what I'll do is show you another view. Just a second. Okay, this is that same data flattened out. And this data is actually ready for rendering a chart. So what you see is instead of those multiple rows, I have it consolidated into one row. And that's exactly what I need for these image charts. It's expecting to get its data all in one single record in SharePoint. So we have to have a step to get to this. So I have a series of 8 common delimited values for each of these, and those are those weeks. This is a little bit more of a sophisticated example, but I'll show you what that will give you. Okay, so this is where we connect back up to what's in the QuickChart Maker, and we can render based on that data. So in my particular view here, my SharePoint fields are called reported, in progress, on hold, complete, etc. So that's exactly what I need to feed in here, where it says dataset 1. I would put comma delimited, and I'd put the names of those. So we're going to come to an example and go through a practice here in just a second. Okay, here's just another example. We're not going to use this one, but you can set a Power Automate workflow to run on a nightly process and just count up those tickets for you. All right, so let's look at a Power Automate workflow so we can better understand how do you get from this over to that summary data, this type of thing. So in Power Automate, you can have different triggers. So you saw I could run a nightly process. I could set something on a schedule, or it could be based on a trigger. I have a trigger in this example, and it says whenever a help ticket is created, when an item's created, I want it to execute these steps in Power Automate. Okay, what I want to do is get items. So I'm actually just pointing right back to that help tickets list, and I'm saying go ahead and retrieve all the records in the SharePoint list, but I need to filter that because what I want to do is get a count on how many are in each category. Okay, so I want to know how many are reported. And to do that, I need this filter query. I don't want to get a count of all help desk tickets. I need a count of just the ones where the status equals reported. So this is a filter query statement. You can see this one's quite easy to understand. Just says we're status, EQ, and then reported, and that's in single quotes. So that's the syntax we use. The EQ, of course, means equals. And then once you have that, you need to take that count, and what we're doing is using a compose action. Effectively, this is making a variable, which I've called reported items. And to do that, I'm going to use a length function, and I'm pointing to the get reported items value. Okay, so you can use the expression builder to do that, and you can type in length. It's going to recognize that, and then it even tells you what to put in there. So basically, I'm asking it to report back to me how many of those there are. And then I just repeat this over and over again. So I want to get reported items, then I want to get in progress items. I'm sure you can guess what that looks like. Status equals in progress. So I keep doing that for each of those different statuses. And then at the very bottom, it's quite easy. I use a update record action, And this is to my other list, which I called Help Ticket Status Summary. And I just say, set this field to that count. So that's the total number of reported tickets, set in progress to that count, etc. So I just can reference to these compose variables that I created, and then that will execute. And the great thing about this is once I've got this workflow set up, it's automatic. It will repeat either according to the schedule or based on the trigger. I don't need to ever worry about it again. It's automatic. And in SharePoint, I'm always going to have that updated information. And that's important. It means that instead of having a static chart that's never going to change, I have a dynamic chart, which is always updating on its own because it's always being fed refresh data. So that's a very important concept. Okay, so we've got a little bit simpler configuration that's easier to understand. This one is not worrying about multiple data series. It's just giving me a summary snapshot of how many tickets right at this moment are in different categories. And then I have one also for statuses. So we're going to do both of those real quick. Now in this case, since I just have only this data and I'm not doing multiple data series, to get that common delimited set that I need in my chart maker, I can actually just use a SharePoint field, which is easier to do than even using Power Automate. So I've made a field called dataset1, and to get that, all I did was come into SharePoint list settings. I created a calculated field, and then you can use an Excel-like formula to compile that together. Quite easy to do and easy to understand. I just told it to give me the number that's in the email field, and then add a comma, then give me the number that's in the hardware field, add a comma, etc., etc. And then that will just show up in the format that I want. And I called that dataset 1. Recall that in here by default, this says dataset 1. I could change that to whatever I want. But basically, this is just a way that I can set up those common limited field values that my chart builder wants. Okay? So that's good. It means that in here, I have the data set up the way that I need to for the chart maker. So now I'm going to build a bridge and make that connection. And this is the exciting part. So what I want to do is I'm going to right click on this data set. And what I want to do is do copy field to clipboard. I want those values so I can see it in my chart maker. Okay. I'm going to reset this back to scratch. And this dummy data, I'm going to replace it with my own data. Okay. I do have one data set count. And in this case, what I want to do is basically just put in these different categories. Okay, so I can just type those in. So it's email, hardware, network. Email, hardware, network. And then the next thing was software, website, and other. Whoops. Software, website, other. Okay, and we'll call this categories. Okay, I did call it dataset 1, so that part's correct. And then I don't like purple. I'm going to change that to blue. Notice the axis starts at 4. I don't like that. I'd rather it start at 0. That is the setting over here where it says min max. I'm going to set that to manual. For the sake of our demonstration, I'm going to do 0 to 15. Okay, you can see that things look a little bit more normal now. I'm going to get rid of the title bar because in SharePoint it actually will show a title for me automatically. Let's go ahead and do a background. So that's canvas background color. We'll make that light gray. and everything looks correct. Of course, I could play around with this and do more things to it if I want to. Here, let's make it a little bit taller. Okay, and then I think that's it for now. We'll just stick with that. All I have to do is hit the second button here, SharePoint JSON code. I'm going to do copy code. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do Format Current View. Click on Advanced Mode. Sorry, it's a little hidden behind my box there. Okay, I'm just going to replace that and hit Save. Just like that, our chart's in there. Now the good thing is, once the chart's in there, if I want to tweak it, it's really easy to do that. If I want to do some more look and feel configurations, let's just say, oh, I don't want blue after all, I want to do orange bars. I just have to do that, copy the code, I can come back to SharePoint and just select all, paste again, and we'll give it a second and it'll render that for me. There it is. Okay, so hopefully you agree that's not too bad. Let's do another one. Let's do a pie chart, and we're going to do based on statuses. Okay, we have 5 statuses that we want to do. Just like I did in the other list, I aggregated my data. So what I'm going to do is right click on that, and I'm going to copy field to clipboard. I'm going to reset this. I'm going to replace my dummy data with my real data. And then what I need to do is, once again, replace those labels. I'm going to put my data set label as status. And then this is reported, in progress, on hold. And then we had complete and canceled. Okay, and we said we wanted to do a pie. Okay, there's the pie. Let's make it a little bigger. I like big charts. Okay, and then let's change the font size a little bit on here. All right, I like the canvas background color. We'll go ahead and leave that alone. And that's it. I am using datasets 1. Everything looks correct. I can go ahead and copy my code. And then I'm going to come over here. Once again, you have to come to this drop down and then do, you want to go to formatting. Sometimes it won't show up. I don't know why that is, but it's not a big deal. If I reset the page real quick, boom, there's Format Current View. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, then I go to Advanced Mode, and just like before, I just paste in. That's all I have to do. And I'll hit Save. There's my chart. And then just like before, if I want to tweak that, at this point it's really easy. Once you're connected up with everything, you can make tweaks really easily. So I don't want that title bar there where it says Chart 1. I'm just going to get rid of that. So I can just come back in here. I can delete the title, just like that. Title's gone. I can copy the code, select all, paste, and I'll just hit Save. There, and the title's gone. So once you have your chart connected, it's pretty easy to make those adjustments. And then I still have my original data view. So if I just want to go back to my data, I can just go back to all items. And that's my source data. And all it's doing is connecting up with this dataset 1 information. Okay. So that was a lot to take in. The image charts is definitely a little bit different kind of approach. And it is something that can be really beneficial. We talked about in a previous video, Power BI can be really expensive depending on how many people want to look at that chart. And there's also a steep learning curve there. It's a developer-oriented platform. It's outside of SharePoint and that type of thing. In terms of what we're looking at with the image charts, the trickiest part about this is the flattening of the data, trying to use workflow to consolidate that. The general concepts aren't complicated. We can all understand the idea of counting up the number of records that have a certain status. We can understand the idea of changing something to common and limited values. The tricky part is just to learn the syntax and functions and Power Automate to do that. But these are really key skills, and that is necessary. There's really no way to get around that. You do have to learn how to take your source data, in this case the help tickets data, and you have to be able to flatten it out. You have to have a workflow to go through and summarize that, flatten that out, in this case make common limited values. And the examples that we built at the end of the video, you could see that things were easier with a single series. We could just use a simple calculated field to just go ahead and concatenate and put together that common and limited set for us. So it takes practice. Charting takes practice. Certainly these examples take practice. I would recommend starting with the tool, which is linked under the video, and just play around with it. Have some fun. Do some different colors, do different backgrounds, change the grid, and try the different chart types until you feel very comfortable with that configuration tool. If you can get comfortable with that tool, it's really only a matter of making your SharePoint list data match up with what's on that screen. And once you connect those two, you're off and running. So I hope you find that beneficial. This is a great alternative approach to doing charts in SharePoint Online. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.